Welcome to another edition of Yorkshire Kris Weekly. On this week's episode, so it's getting colder now. It's the end of October 2017 and tonight there is probably going to be a ground frost. Air temperature going to drop down to 2 or 3 degrees, so it means it's time to dig up all the big Ensetes Ethiopian banana plants. So that's the main job for today, which will take quite a long time because I've got a lot of plants to dig up. So the weather is turning, winter is on the way. Nothing too dramatic in terms of cold yet for the week ahead, but it's definitely time to get the bananas and the very tender plants in, but it's still too early really to wrap up the tree ferns and the musabaju, which are going to be fine for a while yet because there's no frost apart from tonight on the way in the next 7 days, looking at the forecast. So right, it's time to get... Today is the banana Ensete digging up day. So I've got all these Ensete bananas, the large Nebo ones here, and then all these are a year old. So we've got about 10, 12 on this side. Then down here we've got another 15 or so on this area around the stream, and then we've got some little Ensete morellii here, one here, and we've got some further down the garden as well. So it's time to start digging them up.
Let's have one last look at my Ensete Heneba bananas before I remove them from the garden for winter storage. And there's the Montbelliardi as well. There's the biggest Ensete Heneba, which is about 3 meters plus tall. The rest are about up to 2 meters, and they've been great this year. They're all really 1 year old, planted in the ground this year in the second year, and they've done great. So now it's time to remove the leaves and get them ready for winter. So here we are, chopping off all the leaves of these Ensetes. Doesn't do the plants any harm at all, because we are going to basically put them into hibernation mode now. So cutting all the leaves off apart from the main roller and half the leaf on the top of the smaller ones. And I know this looks pretty drastic, but it's completely fine. The plants will grow and thrive next year, fingers crossed. So now I've taken most of the leaves off the banana plants, and as you can see I'm just leaving the main pseudo stems, a 1 leaf and a roller, or half a leaf and a roller on each one. Now we've got to decide which ones we're going to dry store, like the large ones, and which ones probably too small to do that, and we'll have to keep going over winter, and we'll have to find space to do so. So that's one side done in terms of cutting off the leaves. Next we'll do the other side where there's more plants to do and several smaller ones. It's always a sad occasion when you're going to cut off the leaves of the banana plants and you think, well, it's been a great summer watching them grow and then having to cut them back and leaving all the leaves as we do here. But it's important that we do this process, otherwise if we left them outside in the garden, almost certainly they would die over winter. So it's something we just got to grin and bear and get on with. And hopefully next year the bananas will be bigger and better than ever. We've got all the leaves off the Ensete banana, now it's time to dig it up. So using a spade we dig around the banana base, cutting through all the roots, and then we just check it, try to push it over and break the remaining roots.
As we tip it up, hopefully lots of water will come out.
And as you
can see, the roots on this Ensetes mainly have grown around the edge of the corm, and the old corm, the base of the plant, is there with not much life on it really, not much root. It's all around the edge. And it's on a slope now, so water is draining out between the base of the leaves into the pond. And I'll leave that here for a few hours before I attempt to move it. So now I will dig up the rest of the bananas.
Now digging up these smaller Haniba and Sete bananas is much easier and quicker than the large one. Just a few major roots to get round, and they quickly just fall over with a little push. And as they're only a year or so old, they don't have like a big dry corm at the bottom. It's all fresh roots all the way around the edges and through the middle as well. So these are nice healthy plants that will quickly establish again next spring when they are planted out. And I'll do links to those videos here as well so you can see that.
So that's all this side dug up. I'm looking at them now. Most of these are sort of on the borderline of what I like to do for dry storing. As in, they're sort of probably big enough. Some probably aren't quite big enough for certainty of getting through winter without completely drying out and dying. But I will, because of limited space, I will dry store all this side. Whereas on this side, I do have a few that are quite a lot smaller over there at the back, so they'll have to be kept as plants. Most of them, even on this side, will be dry stored.
Right, so the side of this banana is too big for them taken into the greenhouse. So I'm going to cut it in half, make it a lot lighter, and propagate this over winter. Wish me luck.
Now I know this looks a bit gruesome and quite hard to watch, but it'll be fine because I'm going to propagate this plant like I did with the other Ensete Haniba a couple of years ago, which I will share links to the 4-part series of that here. Anyway, back to this one. So I'm cutting through with the serrated knife all the way through, trying to do a clean cut, and then we'll just keep the base and compost the top.
That's made it a lot lighter to carry. That's the bit that I will propagate this winter.
And here now are the Ensete Hanibas, all dug up, or most of them anyway. The bigger ones here are all in the greenhouse. I'll cut back the foliage, so just one leaf on each. It's quite a short greenhouse this, so it won't take long for them to get to the top. So I want these to go pretty dormant, so there's the roots are being trimmed back a bit. They're not in pots, they're just stood up, and they'll be left all winter like this. There's a little bit of soil left on these. Haniba's a bit more forgiving than Morellii, and this little bit of soil with the moisture drawn from the drying leaf stems will just keep the plants ticking over winter, because I will keep this greenhouse sort of 8 to 12 degrees, so quite warm really, so that'll be enough for them just to keep from going completely dormant, and they will survive, believe it or not, like this. And one thing I will say about being in the greenhouse, and especially with all these plants just being brought in, you'll get a lot of condensation on the bubble wrap and the windows, etc. So you need to ventilate as much as you can, so on any days where it's sort of, in my case, 10 degrees or so, then having the door completely open all day just to get rid of some moisture, because especially at first when you bring a lot of potted plants in, and even these drying plants, to give off so much moisture that in the morning you'll see that all this is dripping In fact, that bit's dry, but a lot of that is still wet through. So the door's been left open to ventilate it as much as possible. And that's really, really important to stop detritus and moulds and other rots getting into the plants. So ventilate as much as you can when possible, when temperatures allow. So that's what I'll be doing on the warmish days like we've still got. But obviously close it before dampness falls and any frost or cold weather comes. And that's the large Heniba that I've chopped off just above the base. That's drying off for a little bit, and then I will cut that into quarters, stick it in a pot, dust it with sulphur, and bring that into the house, and that will propagate over winter, and hopefully another 100 or so plants next spring. That's the plan anyway, and I'll do the same with the Montbéliardii. These are the Morellii. I'm going to wash all the soil off these completely, have a bit of soil, let them dry in the sun this afternoon. They've been stood up now all morning, and these will be brought into the garage for a few more days just to completely dry out, and then these will be stored in the house, in loft spaces, cupboards, and they'll stay in the dark but frost free over winter, and fingers crossed to come through. It's never guaranteed that they'll always come through. You'll always get one or so that rots off if you grow a few, just like you would if you're storing apples over winter. You always get a few that rot, so it's important that you have air ventilating around them and they're kept completely dry. And you can only keep them completely dry if they're big enough not to completely dry out through the middle of the plant over winter. So the outside will be completely dry, but obviously inside the plant itself will be moist, and come next spring they'll grow away. Now these small Ensetes bananas I'm just going to dig up, pot up and grow in the house over winter because they're too small to dry store. And these smaller Henibas I brought inside into the bathroom where they'll keep growing through winter. There's also a Thai black Musa there as well. So I'm edging my bets really, got most in the greenhouse drying off, a few as small little plants in the propagator, and these medium to small sized ones in the house where it doesn't go below sort of 15 degrees. As it's getting colder, it's time to dig up these Aeoniums. They can deal with down to freezing, maybe 1 or 2 degrees below for a few hours, but they don't really like it that cold. So we've got all this borders to dig up. There's probably over 100 Aeoniums in here of individual heads, so it's time just to dig these up or pull them up and bring them into the greenhouse for winter. So let's have one last look at this nice bed of Aeoniums before I dig it up. This is Blushing Beauty. Beautiful rosettes with little pinky purple edges to the leaves. Really big fleshy plants that really grow well, strong, just in normal garden soil, or with ideally a bit more drainage, but they grow really well in normal garden soil. So probably one of the best Aeoniums just to plant out in summer. Right, let's start digging these up. So all I'm doing is just finding the base and just pulling, seeing what comes up. That, believe it or not, there's a little bit of root there, but not much. And that's all I need to do. So I'll continue pulling these up. There's a nice big one here. Let's find the base of it over there. And we've got a few plants. All that is grown just these few roots, this huge big plant. Right, put that in the wheelbarrow. We'll continue digging up the rest. Now it's time to take these to the greenhouse and lay them on the benches. Now I'm into the greenhouse with all the Aeoniums, or most of them. They don't all fit in, so some will be just thrown away and recycled. Well, composted really. But as you can see, I've got a fair few in here. And I've put them basically everywhere, so they're just in this tray. There's no extra soil being put in. They're just basically just all shoved in. It's not pretty, and they do lose a lot of leaves over winter and don't look pretty healthy come spring, but they do perk up as soon as they're planted out. So basically it's not the best way to do it, but it's the only way I can do it with the space I have. But I do have backups, so like I said, there's probably 50 to 100 rosettes here. But I just bung them in all the pots I can as well. So if you look up, I've got a little palm seedling here, got a little Aeonium cutting basically there, and again got a few more in pots. There's some over there, they're just in round pots of the plant. That's a Brugmansia. And there's more around that palm tree as well. So basically put them where I can. Some are potted up, but most are just shoved in the trays underneath the greenhouse shelving. They do need a lot of light, that's the one thing I will say. They can't have complete darkness like a lot of other plants can cope with over winter. So they're on the sunny side of the greenhouse, most of them are, and that'll keep them going over winter. I will spray them a little bit with water if they completely dry out, just to keep them from completely desiccating. But apart from that, that's them till April before they are planted out. That is Aeoniums done for 2017. And the sun's just come out just in time to see plant of the week, which this week is a ginger, which is Hedychium greenii, and it's just flowering now with its beautiful orange flowers, and it has beautiful red undersides to the leaves, especially on the stems and the newer foliage. And this ginger is flowering today at the end of October. Unfortunately, probably the only day it does flower because of the frost coming. But this ginger does flower very late, but you could have this in a pot and let it flower in a conservatory or in a house over early winter. But I grow it outside, so it's in the ground all year round with a mulch over the top. It's very late into growth in spring, sort of June time really, before you see much growth. But if you do get it to flower and you keep it indoors so it doesn't get any cold weather on it, then once it's flowered, it forms mini plants from the flowers, little pubules, and then you can let them grow on a bit. They'll grow probably about 15 centimetres or so, and then when it's too heavy, the stem would hit the ground and a new plant would form where the pupil hits the soil and roots are formed. But you can just snap them off, put them in a pot, and then you've got lots of new plants. But you can only do that really if you keep the plant going over winter in a conservatory or a house. But I just grow it outdoors, but it's beautiful, like I said, red foliage contrasting with the green upper side of the leaves. And then if you're lucky, you get these gorgeous peachy orange flowers. Stunning hardy-ish ginger for the garden. That's my plant of the week. And here's something you don't see every day. This is my Miscanthus Giganteus sacrophyllus grass, which is well over 3 meters tall, and it's actually flowering this year, so it must be happy. It's got sort of pinkish flowers, not that exciting to look at, more of just out of interest really, but I just thought I'd share that with you. So that's a Miscanthus grass flower. Probably my favourite aloe is this aloe polyphylla, and it could be hardy down to -10 if kept pretty dry, possibly, but I don't want to take that chance, so this is going to be having a shelter put over it now, and it's growing in pretty much sandy soil here. This is imported topsoil. There's not that much grit in it, to be honest, but this doesn't need to be completely free draining because it does like a bit of moisture. It comes from Lesotho, and so the shelter will be put over this, and I'll do that now. That's the finished shelter, just a bit of polycarbonate over some stakes and screwed down. It's not ugly, I mean it's not pretty, it's pretty ugly, but it'll do the job. It's slanted as well, so the rain and the wind comes this way in and then can just bounce off and slide down. That's the polycarpa. Took all of 2 minutes to do that. I'm running out of time to finish off all the protection today, so this is probably the only plant in the garden that I'll be protecting. Hopefully we won't get to 0 or below. We don't really have time to do the rest, but we should be fine. It's not really a long cold spell, so a little dip down to 0 is not too much, so we don't need to worry about that. So that's another edition of Yorkshire Kris Weekly. Next week we'll be doing lots more shelters and lots of other jobs in the garden.